the chains of defeat, there's no king. See the tears of the broken, the cries of the slaves. Is there no one worthy to set us free?
God's Son, Jesus, came, and he looked like us.
We thought that he was nothing, that he was ordinary, because he suffered like us.
We thought that he knew pain and sorrow. Nothing about him attracted us, so we looked away from him.
But the truth is, the pain that he carried was our pain. He carried it for us. And everything that was wrong with us, he put on himself.
He loved the very least of us, and because he willingly took our punishment, we were made whole.
He was bruised, and we were healed, set free from the brokenness of our lives. He stood up to death. He looked it full in the face and didn't back down.
I am so glad that you could all make it. My name is Simon bin Ezra. Please allow me to share my story with you. In those days, there were many, many people living in and around Jerusalem who believed that Jesus was the Messiah. Everybody had an opinion about him. Every time he healed another leper or another blind man, his fame just grew and grew. And why shouldn't it? He had compassion on people and talked about the kingdom of God. But when Jesus spoke, he spoke with authority, not like our religious teachers. You see, we needed hope, and hope was nowhere to be found. But all of that changed when Jesus rode into Jerusalem. Our King had finally come to deliver us. We were certain this is it. All that we've ever hoped for is finally here. Jesus will do everything that we've been taught that the Messiah would do. How long would it take to drive those filthy pagan Romans out of our country? Well, we didn't know. And we didn't care either. Jesus had a plan. And we were confident that when the time came, we would be ready to act. Everyone knew that Caiaphas hated Jesus and that he hated him because he was afraid of him. Time and again, Jesus boldly called out Caiaphas and his band of religious scoundrels, whitewashed tombs, brood of vipers, hypocrites. But on one occasion, they were trying to trap him, using the law of Moses against him. Rabbi, this woman has been caught in the very act of adultery. The law of Moses commands us to stone her. Now, what do you say? It was just a ruse. They were trying to trick him. They knew what the law said, and they thought they knew what he would say. The only question was, would he fall into their trap? Well, he didn't. In fact, he exposed their self-righteousness. Whoever among you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at him. What happened next was incredible. One by one, they began walking away until they were all gone. Woman, where are they? Has no one accused you?
No one, Lord.
Then neither do I. Now, go on your way and don't sin anymore. Did you see it? A word from Jesus. And just like that, a woman passed from death to life. That's just the way Jesus was. He always showed mercy to everyone. That is, unless you just happen to be a contentious, self-righteous Pharisee who just wanted to argue with him. It seemed like no matter what Jesus did or said, the Pharisees and Sadducees always felt offended by it. That was the one thing that united them together against Jesus. Finally, they convened the whole Sanhedrin and sent out the word. If he even shows his face in the city. We knew what that meant. It meant danger or even death for Jesus. And after what he had just done in Bethany, Lazarus had been dead, lying in the tomb for 4 days. With the word, he called him out from the tomb. Everybody was talking about it. What kind of power is this that he can even raise a man from the dead? Who can stop him? Well, they wanted to kill Lazarus too, to get rid of the evidence of this great power. The fact of the matter was, if you associated with Jesus, your life was in great peril. Truth? They didn't care about the truth. All that concerned them was their position and power in society. The last time that Jesus came into Jerusalem, it didn't seem like the prudent thing to do. After all, Jesus knew that the Jews wanted to kill him. But for some time, we had seen it on his face. He had been determined to make it to Jerusalem. It was as if he was following some plan or some calendar.
And so, all was set in motion as the Father planned. This was a grace so overwhelming that it allowed for nothing to keep us from him. He's so full of mercy. Even though we were dead in our sin, he chose to make us alive through Jesus, his Son. But it took the sorrow of the cross to accomplish the joy of salvation.
And now, because of this divine offering, we can bring ourselves, our burdens, fall down on our knees and draw near to his cross.
My healing.
2 days before the Passover, Simon held an enormous feast in his home in Bethany. Simon, you know, not me, the leper. At least he had been a leper until Jesus healed him. Among the many people that were invited to the feast were Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. But after we had all arrived and looked around, Mary was nowhere to be seen. I'm telling you, what a feast it was! No detail had been missed. Somehow or another, in the midst of all the commotion in the room and all the conversation going on around the table, a woman slipped in unnoticed. Suddenly, we could smell the rich, sweet fragrance of a very costly perfume. When we looked, there was Mary. She had poured the perfume on Jesus' head and fallen to her knees. Now she was pouring it on his feet and wiping them with her hair. We were uncomfortable. We were more than uncomfortable. I looked at Jesus to see how he would respond to her. Some of the others began complaining and scolding her. Such a waste! This perfume might have been sold for more than 300 days' wages, and the money could have been given to the poor. How could you do such a thing? Jesus immediately turned and rebuked them. Leave her alone! Why are you bothering her? For she has done a good deed to me. That's when I realized it. Jesus was the Messiah, the Son of God. That's why he said the things that he said. The others had thought that he would be in agreement with them. So he reminded them, you will always have the poor among you, and whenever you would like, you can do good to them. But me, you'll not always have me with you. Even I didn't understand that last part. What did he mean? Was he going somewhere? There was something sad and sorrowful about the way he said it. But I had realized that Jesus was the Messiah. And as much as I didn't want to admit it, he had not come to lead a rebellion. That left me with a decision to make. And I didn't feel like I could make it.
It is the isolation of Christ that brings to an end our estrangement from the Father.
As Jesus gives himself up in death, the curtain in the temple, shielding the entrance into the Holy of Holies, is torn from the top to the bottom. No longer will we need an earthly priest to approach the throne in our stead because of the tattered rags of sin that shroud us.
Now we have access to God.
From your presence, lost and all alone, wandering in the darkness, no place to call our home. Then love began its journey from a manger to the cross, committed to redeem us, regardless of the cost. the torn curtain, we enter by your grace into your holy presence, into your holy place. No veil to keep you hidden, the Lamb is sacrificed. We're clothed in perfect righteousness, your Savior Jesus Christ. In blood-washed robes we gather, in garments of your praise, we bow before you, Jesus. To you our song we raise, a creature of believers, protected by your hand, a royal holy nation. In victory we stand. Now through the torn curtain we enter by your grace into your holy presence, into your holy place. No veil to keep you hidden, the Lamb is sacrificed. We're clothed in perfect righteousness through our Savior Jesus Christ. Now through the torn curtain we enter by your grace into your holy presence, into your holy place. No veil to keep you hidden, the Lamb is sacrificed. We're clothed in perfect righteousness. We love you, Lord, and we are blessed. Your holy name we now confess, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Jesus
Following that, things went very quickly. After Jesus celebrated the Passover with his disciples, he led them to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. No sooner had he finished praying, but Judas showed up with a large, angry crowd of people armed with swords and clubs. They grabbed him and dragged him off to Caiaphas. Caiaphas? The Sanhedrin? They interrogated him, all right. But it was a mere formality for them. They had long since decided to kill Jesus. So they sent him off to Pilate. Pilate? He was a weak-willed man. He knew that Jesus had not committed any crime against Rome or against the Caesar. He even wanted to let him go free. But he could not decide for himself. So he appealed to the crowd. Their verdict? He's guilty! Guilty! Crucify him! Crucify him! Pilate had Jesus scourged to the point of death. The Roman soldiers mocked him, spit on him, and led him away to be crucified. I followed him, but I didn't want to. Something just kept pushing me on. Before Jesus even reached the city, he stumbled and fell. That's when they let somebody else carry his crossbar for him. It was no act of mercy. It was a mere practicality. Jesus had lost so much blood that he collapsed beneath the weight of the crossbar. He couldn't even lift it, much less carry it. I fell in with the crowd that was heading up the hill. When I reached the top, the Roman soldiers had already begun to crucify Jesus and the two criminals. Every time they pounded the nails, the two criminals screamed with rage. One of them even cursed God. But Jesus, he cried out in pain and called to his Father, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." As Jesus hung upon the cross, the day turned black as night. It seemed to last for an eternity. My God! My God! Why have you forsaken me? It is finished!
It is finished. Finished. The words echo with finality.
And it is Jesus who speaks then, not the enemy. The enemy won't have the final word after all. Jesus has accomplished all that the Father has intended.
In Jesus, justice has met mercy and is satisfied. Sin has been rendered powerless.
And now, in the mystery and the majesty of God the Father's love,
Jesus
is given the name above all names. There is no other name under heaven by which men can be saved.
Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father.
Worthy the Lamb that was slain.
Suddenly, the veil of the great temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The ground began to shake and rumble until it reached a roar. I could barely even hear the Roman centurion when he said, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." I took off running. I wanted to get as far away from that hill as I could. Before I knew it, I found myself in the city with one question pounding in my head. Why did Jesus die the way that he did? For hours, I wandered aimlessly through the streets of Jerusalem with that question pounding and pounding in my head. When my feet and legs could carry me no further, I stumbled into an alley, crumpled to the ground, and fell asleep. When I woke up, it dawned on me. I had slept through the entire Sabbath. It was the first day of the week. I was starved. When I stepped out of the alley to begin looking for something to eat, I could hear rumors swirling among the people. Some were saying that the Roman soldiers had failed in their duty and had fallen asleep. Others, that the disciples had come in the middle of the night and taken his body away. And even a few were saying that Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, they had not only seen Jesus, but they had talked with him. That's when I remembered Jesus' words. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. That was the answer. Jesus chose to die for the sheep. He chose to die for me. I wanted to make the decision. Late that night, I finally found the disciples gathered in a home. When I stepped inside, they were all excitedly talking about how Jesus had appeared to them. They had seen him with their eyes. They had heard him with their ears. And they had even touched him with their hands. When I heard that, I couldn't wait any longer. I wanted to make the decision. I believed that Jesus was the Messiah, the Son of God, that he had died on the cross for my sins and had been buried, but he had risen from the dead and he was alive. In that very instant, the weight of guilt for my sins that I carried all of my life, it was as if it was suddenly lifted from my shoulders. And my eyes were opened. For the first time in my life, I could really see and believe. Jesus saved me. I was alive. I wanted to rush out into the street and tell the whole world what Jesus had done for me. But the fact of the matter was, it was really late. There was nobody out in the street. and I needed some sleep. When I awoke, at first, I thought it might all have been just a dream. But then I realized the weight of guilt for my sins, it was still gone. My eyes were still open, and I could still see. It was true. Jesus had saved me. He was alive. I'm telling you, he's alive.
Let the children sing a song of liberation. The God of our salvation set us free. Death, where is thy sting? The curse of sin is broken. The empty tomb stands open. Come and sing. He's alive, alive, alive. Hallelujah. Alive. Praise and glory to the Lamb. He's alive, alive, alive. Hallelujah. Alive. Forever. Amen. Let my heart sing out for Christ, the one and only, so powerful and holy, rescued me. Death won't hurt me now, because he has redeemed me. The grave will ever keep me from my King. I'm alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, praise and glory to the Lamb. I'm alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, forever, amen. I'm alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, praise and glory to the Lamb. I'm alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, forever, amen. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. He's alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, praise and glory to the Lamb. He's alive, 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 hallelujah, alive, forever, amen. He's alive, alive, praise the Lord. He's the one who is alive, the great alive, praise and glory to the Lamb. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise. Worthy is the one who has overcome the grave. Let the people dance, let the people sing. Worthy is the mighty King. Worthy is the mighty King. Forever,
Revelation, the 5th chapter. Worthy is the Lamb who is slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and glory and honor and strength and praise. Sing it!
Worthy is the Lamb, worthy of our praise.